College, to the staff of Dowasco, to staff from National Bank of Dominica, our sponsors for this event, to our judges, and to the media. Welcome to our Water Week Inter-School Debate Competition. In the past, we've held these debates among students of the Dominica State College, but this year we are pleased to have with us students of the Academics School of Learning. So the State College has a bit of competition this year for our debates. This year's World Water Day is celebrated under the theme, Accelerating Change Through Cooperation and Partnership. This calls for us to do whatever we can in whatever way we can to work towards protecting our water resources. It also calls for us to work together to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 6, water and sanitation for all by 2030. This debate is one of the many activities that we are hosting for our Water Week event. We have had in-person visits to schools, preschools, primary schools, secondary schools. We have had visits from the schools to our facilities at the Antrim Treatment Plant and the Earth Tank at Mount Daniel. We have had poster and essay competitions for the primary and secondary schools. And yesterday we had our first exhibition in the north at our Portsmouth compound. And tomorrow we're having another exhibition at the Botanical Gardens. And in the spirit of cooperation, we're also happy to have with us as part of our week, our partnering agencies. We had the Dominica Red Cross, the Dominica Meteorological Service, Forestry Division, Fisheries Division, Dominica Solid Waste Corporation, and the Office of Disaster Management. So I would like to thank all the debaters. I want to wish them a good luck, and we look forward to an enthralling debate as usual. I'd like to welcome Mr. Etinoff, our General Manager, to give a few words.
Thank you, Ms. Alfred. Let me recognize members of the management team of Dowasco and staff, Ms. Christian of the Dominica State College, students of the college, debaters, the media. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
It's indeed a joy to be here one more time. This debate has now become a formal part, a regular part of our Water Week activities as we continue to partner with the Dominica State College to bring this about. We have with us this morning the folks from the National Bank. I want to welcome you as well. National Bank has been partnering with us for several years now, sponsoring the debate, and for that we are very, very grateful. Over the years we have seen very lively debates, very informative, and I can tell you we have taken from debates in the past some of the suggestions, some of the ideas, the thoughts, and look and see how we can help develop those things in terms of serving our customers in Dominica. This year, the topic, I believe, is, should Dowasco become a private entity? And this, for me, is extremely important, as it will inform not just Dowasco, but Dominica. I'm sure the government ministers might be listening as well to see what is going to come out of it. And I'm sure there are lessons that we will certainly learn from the intriguing debate that we expect this morning. For the first time, we have the Dominica State College debating against another institution, Academic School of Learning, and that makes it even more interesting today. So I'm not here to give a speech, but just to welcome you and say we look forward to a lively debate, active debate, and at the end of the day, I believe we'll all have winners and no losers in this thing. So once again, thank you very much, and welcome everyone.
At this time, I'm going to hand over to our PRO, Mrs. Seja. She will be moderating the sessions for us today.
Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
And I'm sure we're looking forward to a very interesting debate here this morning. So my role here is just to give us an insight as to exactly what is going to happen as we begin the debate. So like our general manager just said it, The topic that we're debating today, or the topic that the two schools are debating today, is Dowasco should become a private entity. That's the statement. The Academics School of Learning is proposing, and the Dominica State College is opposing that statement. Our two speakers for the Academic School of Learning are Nishante LeBlanc and Isaiah Yankee. And for the Dominica State College, we have Ajani Shillingford and Jayudina Desir. After I have completed explaining to us exactly what's going to happen, we will invite them to come and take their seats. We also want to welcome our panel of judges this morning. We have with us Farah Rock Carrier, and Farah is a meteorological instrument technician with over 15 years of experience in the field of meteorology. She was first employed with the Dominica Met Services as a meteorological observer. Mrs. Carrier has an appreciation for articulation and communication as a former news presenter and a TV weather broadcaster. So welcome. We also have with us Miss Rhoda St. John. Rhoda is the Public Relations Officer at the Dominica Solid Waste Management Corporation. She is also the founder of 3 non-profit organizations, including the Business Professional Women of Dominica. She is very much into project writing and execution and is a motivational speaker and mentor. As a past student of the Goodwill Secondary School, Rhoda was part of the debate team. She's a mother of 4 and loves serving others. Welcome, Rhoda. And from our partner agency today, we have Miss Adri Nicholas. She is the marketing officer at the National Bank of Dominica. She is a graduate of the Midwestern State University, where she obtained a bachelor's degree in business administration, majoring in marketing and public relations. She is also a proud member of the 6th Form Cicero Singers. So these are our judges this morning. To keep everything in check in terms of timekeeping and also to assist our judges with tabulating at the end of the session this morning is Mrs. Christine Kelshell, and she is our supervisor of customer service at Dowasco. She has 33 years with the company. She's very involved in serving her church and her community, and she's married and very proud of her 4 children. So welcome again, Mrs. Kelshell. To give us an idea as to the judging criteria for this morning, the students will be judged on soundness of points that they make. They can obtain a maximum of 35 points. Logical development, a maximum of 20 points. Audibility and clarity, 15 points. Posture and personality, 15 points. Command of material, 15 points, and that's for a total of 100 points, and that is in section 1 when they're doing their first presentation. For section 2, for the rebuttal, the students can obtain a maximum of 10 points for team coordination, general analysis of the debate, 14 points, recall of points, 10 points, ability to refute the points, 20 points, spontaneity, 6 points, and that's for a total of 60 points. So the total that any team can amass in their presentation and rebuttal is 260 points, but that's per judge. Right, Miss Christian? Right. So at this point, let us welcome our students who will be debating. And first, we want to call, or we want to invite to the front. We could have our proposing on this side, and our opposing will sit on the other side. From the Academic School of Learning, let us welcome Nishante LeBlanc and Isaiah Yankee. And on the opposing team from the Dominica State College, let us welcome Ajani Shillingford and Jayudina Desir. So to begin, the proposing side will make her case, his or her case. His case, you're the first speaker, will make his case for a maximum of 10 minutes. The leader of the opposition, on the opposing side, shall then make his or her case for a maximum of 10 points. And then we'll move on to the second speaker. So as we go along, we will get more details as to what is happening. But after they've spoken, the second person on the team will speak for a maximum of 7 minutes. So did I say points first? 10 minutes and 7 minutes. Mrs. Kelshall will let the students know when they have 1 minute left and also when their time is up. So Mrs. Kelshall is sitting right in the middle here, so all the students, when you are presenting, be sure to keep your eye on her so you will know when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up. And so to begin this morning's debate, we will call on our first speaker, Isaiah Yankee from the Academic School of Learning.
Delinquency plagues Aid Bank. Garbage collection could halt by this evening. DBS under a microscope. These are just a few of the headlines that one may read concerning entities owned and operated by the state. Madam Moderator, honorable adjudicators, my worthy opponents, distinguished guests, good morning. My colleague and I feel highly privileged to stand before you today to bring forth our views standing resolute in support of the motion that the Dominica Water and Sewage Company Limited, Dowasco, should become a private entity. To highlight the extent of our contribution, I will examine the moot in detail. The Dominica Water and Sewage Company is the sole organization responsible for the water resources in Dominica, and it is a statutory corporation established by an act of parliament. A private entity, as defined by the Collins Dictionary, is one controlled by an individual person or commercial company rather than by the state. We as a proposition have structured our case as follows. I, as the first speaker, will speak about how private entities operate more efficiently than those that are state-owned. 2, how they are immune to corruption. 3, how they are more flexible than state-owned entities. And 4, how making Dowasco a private entity would allow the government to reallocate resources to much-needed areas. Our second speaker, my colleague, will elaborate on the fact that private entities possess a better scope for innovation, they provide services of better quality, and 3, that they stand to benefit from investment and access to capital markets. Now, to begin with my first point, it must be conceded by my colleagues on the other side of this motion that private entities are known to be much more efficient than state-owned ones. The state does not need to allocate resources well, because by virtue of being the state, everyone born and bred on this land is automatically a loyal customer. The fact of the matter is, state-owned entities are riddled with inefficiencies, and we do not need to look very far to find instances in our very own Dowasco. A study looking at the operation of state-owned water utilities done by the World Bank found that Dominica, along with Jamaica, have the lowest rates of access to improved water. This study also found that among our CARICOM peers, Dominica scored among the lowest in the terms of collection, energy, and staffing efficiency, with an average of 2 out of 4 in each category. Such instances of deep-rooted inefficiencies in our state-owned water company silences any doubt as to whether Dowasco should be privatized. My second point about how private entities enjoy immunity from corruption simply needs no lengthy explanation. State-owned entities and statutory boards are, in many countries, characterized by lack of integrity. Hiring decisions are subject to partisan consent, critical contracts are placed in the hands of the unqualified, and decisions are unduly subjected to political input. This unfortunate reality hampers the improvement of important utility infrastructure and, quite frankly, places the most basic human need for water in the hands of self-serving individuals. Private entities stand as a stark contrast to this system, as they are anything but self-serving. Driven by profit, such companies are incentivized to hire the best people for the job, assign contracts to the most capable, and make decisions based solely on economic grounds, and ultimately provide the best service to customers. Now, the 2012 petroleum account scandal, which embroiled the board of DBS, is a fitting example of this. This incident saw the unearthing of a $32,000 gas account at a gas station owned by the former general manager. Unapproved staff salary advances totaling over $96,000 and unsanctioned withdrawals of over $70,000 were also revealed by the Director of Audits. Many more examples of such dishonesty not only exist, but permeate state-run entities in Dominica. When the state regulates the state, when statutory bodies are not amenable to shareholders or even customers, when the scope and size of state-run entities mean that no recourse exists, situations like these are sure to happen. On the other hand, integrity and honesty are undoubtedly certain when consumer confidence and profits are at stake. Private utility companies are subject to review and audit by the government. They are subject to the opinions and inputs of shareholders, and most importantly, they are subject to the voices of you and me. This brings me to my third point, flexibility. Private entities are more flexible and can adapt to changing market conditions and consumer demands much more quickly than those run by the state. State-run entities are subject to drawn-out political processes that cause them to be characterized by inertia and stagnancy. Private entities are not amenable to the critics and passions of the public in the same way public entities are, and as a result of this, temporary hikes in rates, for example, which are sometimes necessary for improvements and updates to infrastructure, can be easily implemented. Moreover, whereas plant expansion, site renovation, or a decision to possibly fluoridate our water supply may be subject to cabinet approval and consent, such decisions can simply be made by company executives in the private sector setting. According to utilities expert Woodward Lawrence, government organizations often find themselves bound by procurement procedures and bureaucratic red tape that do not lend itself to be the most responsive to the needs of society. It is in these areas that private companies can fill the gap. The red tape that exists with public bodies restricts the fluid operation of utilities, no pun intended. Studies show that bureaucracy results in billions of lost economic output every year. In our South American neighbor Brazil, output lost because of administrative protocols stands at $20 billion. Imagine the money that could be saved. Imagine the reduced water bill you could enjoy if private sector simplicity was allowed to be the order of the day. All these possibilities signal the strength of the motion that Dowasco should indeed become a private entity. Finally, in the face of all these reasons that seem to criticize state-owned entities, stands a positive suggestion, dare I say, a golden opportunity. Many schools stand unrepaired from damage from Hurricane Maria. Vital infrastructure is not exactly where it needs to be. Our dedicated opponents experience a delayed start to their schooling due to long overdue repairs on their school campus. I say all this to say that making Dowasco a private entity should not be viewed as an idea to oppose or even the loss of a national treasure, but quite the opposite. It should be welcomed as an opportunity for the state to transfer time, energy, and resources to other much-needed areas like education, healthcare, and economic growth. Several studies done by the Inter-American Development Bank reported that state-owned entities in the Caribbean are very, very costly, requiring governments to devote as much as 9% of their GDP simply to cover losses. A swelling government portfolio of state-owned entities means that while the national budget may seem to cover all what is needed, individual sectors and departments do not receive the resources they need to carry out their functions competently. My previous arguments have proven that the private sector is more than capable of stewarding our water resources. Making Dowasco a private entity would mean that the government would no longer need to absorb occasional losses. It would no longer need to expend public funds on financial audits, and it would not need to concern itself with the day-to-day operations of a company of national scale. Instead, roads can be repaired, towns and villages revitalized, and hospital services improved. The scope of what can be achieved if Dowasco is privatized simply cannot be overstated. It is for these reasons that we argue firmly and stubbornly in support of this motion, that the Dominica Water and Sewage Company Limited should become a private entity. The proposition rests momentarily.
And no need to say a round of applause for our first presenter, but another round of applause. We will now invite to the podium on the opposing team, our first speaker, Ajani Shillingford. The opposing team, the Dominica State College. Ajani Shillingford, make him feel welcome.
Water, 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 water is life. Who controls the water decides who lives and who dies. These are the resounding and visionary lyrics of a 2021 Calypso titled Water, delivered by King Dice, former Calypso King of Dominica. Indeed, water is life. Madam Moderator, honorable judges, Dowasco management team, representatives of the National Bank of Dominica, my esteemed colleague, my worthy opponents, technical staff, listening audience, and media, good morning. It is with great passion and conviction that I stand before you here today, alongside my respected colleague, to present our case in opposition to the moot Dominica Water and Sewage Company, Dowasco, should become a private entity. We affirm in unequivocal terms that Dowasco should not and should never become a private entity. Once we have presented our irrefutable arguments here today, I have no doubt that each one of you will support our stance. The question of who gets to manage the water resources of a country is one of primordial importance to all of us as a nation because water is life. Madam Moderator, honorable judges, allow me to provide some clarification to the moot at hand. What is a private entity?
According to the Collins English Dictionary, a private entity, as opposed to a public entity, is an industry or service owned or controlled by an individual person or a commercial company rather than by the state or an official organization. The Dominica Water and Sewage Company Limited, Dowasco, under scrutiny here today, is a public company. It was established in December 1989 by Parliament Water and Sewage Act No. 17, and the government of Dominica holds 100% ownership. Dowasco is managed by a general manager and 4 department managers under the direction of a government-appointed board of directors. As declared on Dowasco's official website, dowasco.dm, the vision of the company is, and I quote, Dowasco, the steward of our national treasure, enhancing lives by providing quality, affordable water and sewage services in an environmentally sustainable manner, end of quote. Throughout my presentation, I will outline the following points substantiated by evidence. First and foremost, water should not be treated as an ordinary marketable commodity. Secondly, I will prove that privatization will lead to higher rates for consumers. And finally, I will expound on the issue of property rights and the responsibility for preserving and conserving the natural resources of this island, the nature island of the Caribbean, on a holistic level. My attentive audience, the question proposed today in simple terms is, should we take the ownership and control of the treasured water of Dominica from the government and hand it over to private investors who we know nothing about? We say no, because water is life. Madam Moderator, one of the most compelling reasons why Dowasco should not become a private entity is the fact that the government has an obligation to ensure that the basic human rights of all its citizens are respected, and water is a human right. The United Nations has adopted a historical resolution declaring water as a human right. According to the official website of the United Nations, un.org, and I quote, on 28 July 2010, through Resolution 64/292, the United Nations General Assembly explicitly recognized the human rights to water and sanitation and acknowledged that clean drinking water and sanitation are essential to the realization of all human rights, end of quote. Madam Moderator, it is therefore clear that water is not a want, nor a luxury, nor an option. Water is a need and a right. UN Resolution 64/292 goes on to further corroborate my point, and again I quote, the resolution calls upon governments and international organizations to provide financial resources, to provide safe, clean, accessible, and affordable drinking water and sanitation for all, end of quote. If Dowasco were to become a private entity, as my opponents are proposing, the government would be forsaking its obligation to care for its citizens. Private entities have no legal obligation to safeguard the human rights of the poor and the downtrodden. And this question of affordability leads me to my second argument, a pertinent and undeniable argument, because water is life. The privatization of Dowasco would automatically lead to rate increase for the consumers, because the very objective of a private entity is to make a profit. Profits are not reinvested in cheaper services. Profits are paid to shareholders. The company as a private entity becomes a taxpayer. Plus, it will no longer have automatic access to government and international grant funding. Madam Moderator, we have the example of another Dominican utility service that was privatized, the Dominica Electricity Services Limited, DOMLEC. DOMLEC went from 100% government ownership in 1983 to 99.9% private ownership in 2022, and profits for the shareholders skyrocketed along with the consumers' DOMLEC bills. Because of the ongoing cry, the government was forced in 2022 to reclaim majority ownership, 52%, to save the day. a Dominican News Online article in October 2012 titled Public Cry About the Rise in Electricity stated, and I quote, Dominicans will have to dig deeper into their pockets to pay their electricity bills from Domlec, the island's sole electricity provider. 10 years later, the cry remained the same. A Sun newspaper article in June 2022 titled Public Cry About Rise in Cost of Electricity exposed a multitude of testimonies of Domlec customers lamenting about, and I quote, the skyrocketing cost of electricity in Dominica, end of quote. Madam Moderator, if Dowasco were to follow suit and become a private entity, while these executives and shareholders are laughing their way to the bank, Dominicans would only have a Dowasco bill in their hands to dry their tears. My worthy opponents, is that what we want for the citizens of our country? Magoesa, that is not what we want. What we do want is for our citizens to have access to affordable water, because water is life. Madam Moderator, the issue of property rights and the question of preservation and conservation of that property is a major concern. An April 2022 video documentary produced by Dowasco entitled Dowasco from Catchment to Customer provided clear insight on Dowasco's responsibility in safeguarding the vast amount of lands over valleys, rivers, and mountains utilized in the water process. A private entity would not be a committed ally and inevitably would exploit the resources for maximal gain to the point that it could upset the ecological balance. Ms. Louise Alfred, Environmental Monitoring Officer at Dowasco, responded to my question of land ownership, and I quote, given the location of intakes way up in the forest, they are mostly on Crown land. The storage tanks and pumping stations are on Dowasco land purchased from private owners, end of quote. Madam Moderator, my earnest question about the ownership and protection of these lands begs the following questions. How would the private entity take possession of these vast areas of Crown land? Would they lease the land to further jack up the prices on water bills? Would that private entity have an obligation to share the government's vision of conservation and preservation of our lands? Madam Moderator, to be honest, the responses to these questions would be an embarrassment for any private entity desiring to purchase Dowasco. We should not ever gamble with our lives by placing this national treasure that is our water into the hands of random private investors whose sole aim is to make a profit. Lest we forget, water is life. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our second presenter from the Dominica State College. And I should mention that our first presenter from the Academic School of Learning spoke for 10 minutes, and our second presenter from the Dominica State College spoke for 10 minutes and 30 seconds. We are moving on to our second round of competition, and from the proposing side, we want to invite to speak for 7 minutes our second speaker, Miss Nishanti Leblanc. Make her feel welcome.
Is this good? That sounds good? Okay. All right. State-owned enterprises under scrutiny again. Privatized water supplies. State-owned enterprises reform coming, and still coming. More headlines. Madam Moderator, honorable adjudicators, my worthy opponents, and distinguished guests, a pleasant morning to you. I stand before you this morning to argue in favor of the motion that the Dominica Water and Sewage Company, Dowasco, should become a private entity for the following reasons. 1, private entities possess a better scope for innovation. 2, they provide an overall better quality of service. 3, we stand to benefit from investment and access to capital markets. Undoubtedly, private entities have the financial resources and flexibility to invest in research and development, thus paving the way for innovation. They also possess the motivation to invest in research and development, which can lead to new technologies, more efficient systems, and improved service delivery. State-owned water companies have lamented the lack of internal and external financial resources to address a variety of challenges in meeting future demands, especially under climate uncertainty. Now, our opponents may argue that both private and state-owned entities have the potential to innovate, but it is crucial to foster an environment that encourages and supports innovation, an aspect that is not well received by state-owned entities. In 2019, K&M Advisors published a report entitled Governance Position Paper on the Caribbean Water and Sanitation Sector, which assessed the operating efficiency, financial policies, and institutions of the water and sanitation sectors in 7 Caribbean countries, including Dominica. It was found that the lack of innovation resulted in the treatment of wastewater being noticeably lacking. May I remind you, my learned opponents, Dowasco's responsibility also includes sanitation coverage services in urban and rural areas where a gap still exists. In fact, utility performance based on World Bank's water utility turnaround framework saw Dowasco scoring an impressive 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which indicates elementary and basic scores in financial management, technical operations, and communication operations in water, sanitation, and sewage coverage. Well done! Secondly, the Caribbean Development Bank, the World Health Organization, and K&M Advisors have reported that the quality of service provided by many state-owned corporations is generally poor. Most utilities we surveyed in Dominica did not even provide information on the quality of service. This lack of information is an indicator of poor quality of service. Quality of service describes the reliability, continuity, and responsiveness of the service provided by the utility. Private utilities are incentivized to provide high-quality customer service, resulting in faster response times, better communication, and more personalized service. In fact, a study from the World Bank revealed that among CARICOM countries, our own state-owned water utility company, Dowasco, had the highest number of service complaints per 1,000 customers. My learned opponents, if you are so concerned about water as a natural resource being offered as a social good in the interest of the public, why are you entrusting it in the hands of an entity that fails to consider your call that a pipe burst in your area? Finally, private utilities have access to capital markets and can raise funds more easily than government-run entities, which can allow them to make larger investments in water infrastructure and technology. Investment in and the operation of water supply and sanitation infrastructure is a capital-intensive undertaking. According to a research article submitted to Loughborough University, developing countries spend about US $30 billion a year on investment in water and sanitation. but easily need twice that amount to serve those without essential services, to upgrade existing infrastructure, and avert environmental crises in the future. Our government's capacity to satisfy this demand, however, is limited, as the growth of public expenditure is increasingly constrained by pressing social needs and the overriding need to maintain macroeconomic stability. Significant investment needs and the budgetary constraints of our government, therefore, make a strong case for alternative sources of financing in this sector where there is already limited managerial autonomy. Honorable judges, I bring finality to our arguments by reminding you of the complex problems that state-owned companies face, which includes a lack of innovation, poor quality of service, and low investment capacity, which cannot be solved by applying a cookie-cutter approach, as my opponents may suggest. Improving corporate governance, including, but not limited to, competent management, free from direct political interference, dedicated leadership, and operational and managerial efficiency are critical and can be better achieved under the competence of privately owned companies. The proposition rests momentarily. I thank you.
Another round of applause for the Academic School of Learning. And now we move to our second presenter from the Dominica State College, Miss Jayudina Desir, for her 7-minute presentation. Make her feel welcome.
Let's take a trip down memory lane. It is September 19th, 2017. People are walking around Dominica in the days of the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, container in hand, searching for water. Thankfully, within a few months, majority of the homes and business places in Dominica had regained access to pipe-borne water. This was an outstanding display, one that the international community should emulate, of a public entity's commitment not to its pockets, but to the well-being of the country that it serves. Thank God for Dowasco. Madam Moderator, honorable judges, my worthy opponents, my esteemed colleague has already elucidated some of the major reasons why the Dominica Water and Sewage Company, Dowasco, should not become a private entity. In support of our stance, I, in turn, will provide additional evidence, and I shall expound on the following points. Firstly, Dowasco becoming a private entity will create a monopoly. Secondly, privatization leads to less accountability and transparency. And my last substantive point is privatization often leads to employment losses. Madam Moderator, if Dowasco were to become a private entity, the government would be handing over a monopoly to the private sector with disastrous consequences for the economy. A monopoly, as described by world-renowned American economist Irving Fisher, is, and I quote, a market with the absence of competition, creating a situation where a specific person or enterprise is the only supplier of a particular thing, end of quote. Madam Moderator, the great danger of a monopoly is that the company is the only choice and customers have to accept whatever the company provides. Like the popular phrase says, beggars are not choosers. In that environment, this leads to high prices, low quality products, lack of incentive for innovation, cost push inflation, poor customer service, and little pressure to make changes. There is no competition, so the company has no incentive to do better. This is the situation that the UK is currently facing with its privatized monopolies. An article published by The Guardian on August 10th of 2022 made mention of the disastrous situation, and I quote, "Companies' pressing concern was to make money rather than think hard about the challenge of the climate emergency. Hence, water companies will impose hosepipe bans in record-breaking summer heat, despite up to a fifth of water being lost to leaks. Two companies restricting water use have some of the worst environmental conditions. Thames Water, which will ban lawn watering for its 15 million customers, was fined £20 million in 2017 for tripping 1.4 billion litres of raw sewage into rivers." End of quote. In addition, another article published in July of 2021 stated that customers' water bills were 40% above the rate of inflation. Imagine such a situation occurring on a small island like Dominica. Isn't that dangerous? Madam Moderator, does Dominica have the capacity to handle the strains of a utility monopoly? For my second point, Madam Moderator, a private entity is not democratically accountable to the customer, and consequently, there will be less transparency. When a utility company is owned by the government, there is no hidden information. The people's needs becomes their top priority, and therefore, concerns, complaints, and suggestions are addressed for optimal service provision. Private operators, on the other hand, usually restrict public access to information. According to a highly reputed website, Investopedia.com, I quote, "As the name implies, a private company is not required to disclose financial information to the public." End of quote. This lack of accountability and transparency fosters corruption. For example, in a public entity, contracts are all approved by the government, which reduces fraud and fund embezzlement. However, a private entity is not obligated to do so. The April 2022 video documentary produced by Dowasco, entitled "Dowasco, From Catchment to Customer," mentioned earlier by my esteemed colleague, is a sterling example, one of accountability and transparency of a public utility company in action. Clearly, the customer is in the forefront of these public utilities concerns. Well done, Dowasco. Madam Moderator, privatization often leads to employment losses. Labor costs can be up to 50% of the budgetary expenses that a utility company manages each year. Private entities resort to reducing staffing levels as an easy way to increase profits and reduce costs at the same time. Madam Moderator, this is not in the best interest of the customer, and it is not in the best interest of this country. Job restrictions affect the national unemployment rate and consequently the economy on a whole. Madam Moderator, honorable judges, my esteemed colleague and I stand firm in our belief that under no condition should Dowasco ever become a private entity. A public utility company respects water as a human right, must provide affordable service, and respects the government's mandate for ecological sustainability. A public entity prioritizes the customer and not profit, is accountable, transparent, and upholds the national mandate for employment. Thank God for Dowasco being a publicly owned utility company. I thank you.
And we want to thank both schools for great presentations here this morning. At this moment, let's give another round of applause for Miss Desir. Our second speakers from the Academic School of Learning, 6 minutes and 55 seconds, and from the Dominica State College, 7 minutes and 30 seconds. At this point, we will give the students an opportunity to prepare their rebuttal. They will have 5 minutes to do so. I am kindly requesting that we give them the courtesy of being quiet so that they can concentrate and prepare their rebuttals. So they have 5 minutes to do so, and then each speaker will be invited to speak for 5 minutes. So present their rebuttal for 5 minutes, for 2 minutes, for 3 minutes. Okay, I'm being corrected here. So 5 minutes to prepare, and they will present the rebuttal 3 minutes each. Isaiah Yankee from the Academic School of Learning to present his rebuttal in 3 minutes.
Water is life. Our opponents merely achieved to make our return to the podium a pleasant one. Do not be deceived by the spineless points of the opposition. We return to dissect their arguments and reinstall our confidence in Dowasco if and only if they become a private entity. Good morning once again. I will address 2 points from the first speaker and 2 points from the second speaker. These include the following claims: that if Dowasco becomes a private entity, you as customers will experience higher rates. The second point is water should not be treated as a commodity. The third point is from the first point from the second speaker, the claim that making Dowasco a private entity would result in the creation of a private monopoly. And the second point from the second speaker, that transparency will not exist in the case of private entities. My learned opponents claimed, using examples from Domlec, poorly researched I'll add, that when Domlec became a public entity, rates reduced, and while it was a private entity, customers felt a pinch in their pocket. This claim is simply not true. The fact of the matter is that rates are not set by Domlec, but rather the Independent Regulatory Commission that settles that. The second point is that water should not be treated as a commodity. The fact of the matter is water is in fact a commodity, and a scarce one at that. We have proven in our arguments that the public ownership of the Dowasco and its current managerial nature, is not capable of managing the water resources efficiently, and we have given many examples of avenues in which private entities will provide a better operation. Moving on to the points of the second speaker, the fact that Dowasco will become a monopoly if it is transferred into private hands is simply not untrue, but it fails to realize that Dowasco is, in fact, in its current state, a government monopoly. The last point from the second speaker, that transparency will not exist, is simply untrue, because transparency does not exist now, and her claim that regulations do not apply to private entities simply is a matter of legislation and is, in a sense, in the hands of the government. Thank you.
Once again, let's give a round of applause to Isaiah Yankee. So Isaiah's rebuttal was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And now moving on to the Dominica State College for their rebuttal, Ajani Shillingford. Make him welcome.
Madam Moderator, honorable judges, my colleague and I have listened to our opponents with utmost respect. However, the rocambolesque and misleading theories presented in support of their claim that the Dominica Water and Sewage Company should become a private entity has left us in a state of sheer bewilderment and a bit of sadness. Sadness, Madam Moderator, because my opponents have failed to understand that not all of the economic theories that apply to the humongous developed countries of the Western world apply to us here in Dominica. My dear opponents, this is not planet Dominica. This is the tiny, developing, independent state of Dominica. Tiny, both geographically and demographically. Madam Moderator, my opponents have brought forth a number of refutable points. The leader of the proposition wrongfully affirms that Dowasco would be more efficient if it were not publicly owned. However, that is not true. Let it be known that any issue that exists now would be amplified if the legal status of the company is to be changed. It is not an issue of the status of the entity. It is about aligning all the critical elements for success, the management. Dowasco has access to the same pool of individuals who could potentially be hired by a private entity, so we cannot point fingers on the personnel of Dowasco. It was also mentioned that it is characterized by lack of integrity and it is driven by profit. But here again, this should not be a profit incentive. It should not be driven by profit. It should be driven by a Pareto optimality incentive so that it could be as efficient as can be to accommodate all the individuals, the citizens of this country. How many of us here today are afforded the right to clean, running water and sanitation services in our homes and private workplaces? Let us be grateful for this public entity that despite the many challenges of the last few decades, today has 98.5% coverage of service to the general populace of Dominica. Dowasco is a public entity that cares so much for its consumers that we have been brought here today as a part of Water Week, a program geared at informing, educating, and showing appreciation to the consumers. That is a dynamic public entity in action. However, Madam Moderator, my capable opponents would prefer to deny us that voice. They are basically saying to the Dominican people to eat your biscuit and shut your mouth. Let the private investors come in, whether local or foreign, come in and take over what God has blessed this island with, our water. We say no. The Dominica Water and Sewage Company, Dowasco, should not become a private entity because our water belongs to us and Dominicans and Dominica, and water is life. Thank you.
We have come to the end of our debate. I think it was a very impressive debate by both teams. I'm not sure what your impressions are as the audience who listened. You agree with me? Yes. At this moment, our judges will tabulate their points, and we will announce at the end of today the best speaker and the best team or the winning team for today's debate. So judges, I'm not sure if you want to stay here or if you want to, you're good here? Yes. So probably at this point, Ms. Christian, you're saying the judges should move away from, you would like them to move away? Because we're going to have a little debate of our own and we don't want to sway. Let me at this time take the opportunity to thank all those who listen to us via the various channels. We have with us the Dominica News Online. We also have MO News. We have with us DBS Radio and Kyrie FM. So we really want to thank the audience for staying with us and for being part of this debate. And I'm sure those of you who are listening via social media, you're also having your own debate online as to whether Dowasco should become a private entity. At this point, I'm not sure if anyone would like to perhaps come to the podium and give us your views on what occurred here this morning, or if you have any ideas of your own. Perhaps we can have a little discussion while we give our judges some time to decide who our winning team is this morning. Anybody? Trudy, I can see you itching. I know you. Okay, so you want to stay? I'm only inviting them because I want the general public to have the opportunity to hear what is being said as well. Even if you don't have a point of your own, but probably you want to comment on some of the points that were brought up this morning. All the smart students we have here. Anybody from Dowasco? Any teacher? Perhaps at this moment, we should take the opportunity. You'd like to come, Shudi? You don't want to ask Dowasco questions. So maybe at this point, we should take going once, going twice. You can ask the question. So that will lead to some sort of discussion, some sort of back and forth. Hopefully, Mr. Etinoff will be willing to come. Or I could answer some questions. If I can, eh? It's okay.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't want to come to the podium. I wanted to stay kind of in the background. But I felt the debate was very lively. A lot of very interesting things came out, and I really wanted to know the opinion of some of the staff of Dowasco, particularly as it related to, some of the claims of efficiency, some of the points that were brought up. Would private versus public make a difference in terms of overall management of the company and how things work? What is the impact of the topography of the island and the other external factors in some of the points that were brought up? So I really wanted, I know it's, it won't affect the judge's decision because they are not with us, but I just wanted, if there could have been a little Dowasco input in some of the things that were brought up. But I did think that there were a lot of interesting points. And I just wanted to know what they felt. And I also felt, Mrs. Seja, in a debate like this, where the company who is orchestrating and bringing forth the debate gets blows during the debate, what is the feel on that? Are the comments and the points taken into consideration? I am really intrigued as to the response of the company, because it has happened in other debates where the organizing entity gets some blows. So I wanted to know the feedback from Dowasco. That's what I was sitting there thinking, yes. So I hope, if not the general manager, but somebody from Dowasco might want to make a comment to that. So I'm just trying to get you all to get you a lot. But yeah, I believe it was very engaging. And as the Dominica State College coach, I appreciate the competitiveness now between academics and the Dominica State College. I think it makes for more, for better debating and for more competitive debating. So I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christian. Well, as it relates to Dowasco and getting blows, I know I said a little ouch here this morning, but I only honestly listened for my part in communication, So both teams, I think, had salient points, and it would be incumbent on us to take those points and see, how we can make improvements. So we listen not to be defensive, but to see how we can take those points into consideration and make improvements. Mr. Etinoff, I'm sure you may want to add to that. So let us invite him to the podium to answer some of those questions.
Well, thank you very much. Very impressive. I'm really impressed with the quality of the debate we've had here from both sides, really. Didn't want to speak after the debaters. I do not want to sound defensive in any way. we could look to facts and what is facts, what is fiction. I'm not going that route at all. I'll just say that there were strong points on either side. In terms of private sector and efficiency, one needs to look carefully at things like that. How privatizing water would lead to efficiency, something that we need to be careful about. Certainly, experience has shown, and not just in Dominica, throughout the world, that any private water utility deprives probably a large percentage of people from access to water. Do we really want that in Dominica? I don't think so. I can speak of a country, for example, I could call it Belize, where water was privatized. Shortly after, when the private sector made the investment, the government had to jump back in and take it back because too many people were without water, you know. So that is, you know, these are some of the arguments. In terms of a monopoly, really, that is the case for potable water. There is other waters that people sell, bottled water and so on. But is there really room for maybe a second, a third, a fourth water utility in a small country? In terms of efficiencies, there are checks, there are balances, there are a number of things that can be done to bring about efficiencies, you know, be it privatized or non-privatized. So, you know, I think lots of food for thought, really, that's what I want to say at this point. Intelligent debate, well-researched in most instances, lots of instances. I will just probably make a picture for Dowasco that among the utilities of the region and further beyond, we have been rated way up there in lots of instances, number of cases. So we're doing some things good, at least, you know, and we intend to continue to improve. When we listen to the points raised here, we know there are some things we have to make sure we do and do better. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Etinoff. And our debate here this morning is part of Water Week that Dowasco is hosting this week, as we celebrated we observed World Water Day yesterday. And normally to commemorate World Water Day, Dowasco hosts a number of activities. And so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we had the opportunity to go to several schools across the island, and also invited a few schools to come to us so that we could take them on tour to a couple of our sites, and those went pretty well. Yesterday also we had Customer Appreciation Day and hosted a small exhibition in the north on the grounds of our Portsmouth office. Those went well as well. And today we are here. Tomorrow we are culminating Water Week with a grand exhibition at the Botanic Gardens. So we are inviting all of you who are here to the Botanic Gardens tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Also, those of you who are listening to us, it's an opportunity for you to come and continue the discussion in the Botanic Gardens. Staff from Dowasco will be there to explain to us and to demonstrate even to us how water is taken from the source to our taps, and also in the area of sanitation, we also have a presentation in that regard. So this week we had a number of partners as well. We did not only do this on our own. The Forestry Division, Fisheries Division, Met Services, the Red Cross, Solid Waste Management Corporation, ODM, partnered with us, really highlighting this year's theme, accelerating change through cooperation and partnership. And like both of our teams spoke this morning, water is life. There are still billions of people in the world who have no access to water. And so accelerating change is really about all of us coming together to ensure that by 2030, the UN Sustainable Development Goal is accomplished, and that more persons can have access to water and sanitation. I will now invite our coordinator of Water Week activities, Luis Alfred to give us some more information on our sponsors for the week. We want to make sure that we recognize all those who played a financial role in ensuring that we were able to host Water Week 2023.
Okay, good morning again. So to highlight some of our sponsors for the week, we have Petrocarib, National Petroleum, Acme Garage, Carlton Phillip, Local Government, Office of Disaster Management, Kawasa, Isratech, Fitchner Water and Transport, and Waterworks. We are very thankful to the sponsors and National Bank of Dominica as well for partnering with us and helping us make this week possible. As it relates to the discussion that Ms. Christian tried to stir up with us this morning, I just wanted to say from the environmental point of view, water is seen as a social good. It's more on the social end of things. So even if you have the commercial and utility part of it, you hardly find cases where water is fully privatized, especially in small countries like ours. Again, like Mr. Etinoff mentioned, because of the access of things. So when you have fully privatized, you find the cost might increase, and then you have the poor, the marginalized persons, it's difficult for them to get that access, where you find the government might have more compassion for people. If you can't afford your water, there might be more compassion compared to if it's a private entity. They may not have that level of compassion for you. What you sometimes find happening is public-private partnerships. So maybe on one end, you might have the private entity handling the infrastructure, which is where most of the cost comes in, maybe some form of the management. And if they put the infrastructure in place, maybe they hand it over to the private entities then to run it. And so they handle more of the finance part of things, which is where most of the load comes in, and then you find the government takes on the public part of it. So, but again, interesting debate, well researched, so it was very, very interesting.
Thank you, Louise. Ready? Yes? I cannot see your mouth, so you have to. Are you ready? Okay, so wonderful. We are ready to find out who the winning team is. I can see some nervousness, boy. But like we said from the beginning, there are no losers here today. I believe that both teams did an excellent job, and so it's maybe more a matter of presentation. Okay. Yes. So today we will announce our winning team and also our most eloquent speaker, and we will contact the Dominica State College and the Academic School of Learning to let you know when our prize giving ceremony is. Usually we do a prize giving ceremony for our poster and essay competition, which I forgot to mention that we also hosted this week. Well, received this week our posters and essays. So after we've judged all of those, then we will have a separate ceremony where we will invite you to receive your prizes. Is anybody going to hand me the... Yes? Let me make sure I get it right so I don't do a Steve Harvey here this morning. So before we announce the winners, we usually like to hear from the judges what their overall impression of the debate was. And so Adrian Nicholas from the National Bank of Dominica will speak on behalf of the judges here this morning. Let's make her feel welcome.
Okay, afternoon, everyone. It was actually a pleasure being here today. We really enjoyed this. Debaters, let's give them a round of applause, guys. You all did great. We can see that you all did your research in terms of how you presented the data, that you were very articulate and also very spontaneous. It was very exciting, filled with personalities. We had some talent on exhibit, some singing. We have future calypsonians here. So we really enjoyed that in terms of the creativity in how you delivered. That was excellent. However, there were some pros and cons in terms of both sides, actually. For the proposing side, sometimes the delivery was not as confident as the opposing side. Also, in both teams, we thought that there was something that was missing, which was a lack of focus on the unreliability and water safety. So we know that we have water outages a lot. Nobody really spoke on that. And in terms of water safety, I think somebody mentioned it slightly, but we were looking for a little more in terms of that. Also, the rebuttals, both teams, you all did a great job, but there was one team who did better than the other in terms of actually attacking points from their opposition. And so, well, you'll find out who that is. So yeah, that was missing in terms of the rebuttals. We thought that the rebuttals overall could have been a little stronger in terms of the attack on the points that were delivered throughout the debate. So that was missing. But overall, guys, you did a great job. We really enjoyed this. We're looking forward to next year. And congratulations to both teams and congratulations to the winning team. Thank you.
So we have a winning team and we have a best speaker, which I will announce. I hope I can be as dramatic. So we'll start with the winning team. Well, when I call the winning team, then obviously we only have two teams, so the other team will know that they're in the second position. So the judges, start with the best speaker. More drama? Okay. So the best speaker here this morning, the judges have decided that the best speaker for this morning's debate is Nishante LeBlanc. Of the Academic School of Learning. The judges have also decided here this morning that the winning team is on the proposing side. So the Academic School of Learning, first time debating in Dowasco Water Week, are our winners here this morning. We want to thank the Dominica State College for always partnering with us and always being on board. We want to thank Ms. Trudy Christian for her hard work in preparing the students, and we also want to congratulate again the Academic School of Learning for doing a great job here this morning. And at this point, to close our proceedings here, I will invite Miss Louise Alfred to come and give a vote of thanks.
Short vote of thanks. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone who made today possible. The students for their hard work, their research, the teachers, the judges, the media, the members of the different organizations, Dowasco, management and staff. We're very thankful for you all. I think this is the 4th year we're having our debates, and we thank the Dominica State College for always partnering. Thank you for Academic School of Learning for coming on board this year. I hope this can be a continued partnership, that we could have some competition for the State College every year. So we are very thankful that they decided to take part, and we're looking forward to more fruitful and exciting debates. Like our PRO mentioned, we'll be having a prize-giving ceremony for all our competitions that we had for Water Week. So we hope everybody can be part of that again. Once again, we want to thank all our sponsors for our Water Week: Petrocarib, National Petroleum, Acme Garage, Carlton Phillip, Local Government, Office of Disaster Management, Kawasa, Isratech, Fishner, Water and Transport, Waterworks. We want to thank our partnering agencies: Forestry Division, Fisheries Division, Dominica Meteorological Service, the Dominica Red Cross, Dominica Solid Waste Management Corporation, I think that's it, and Office of Disaster Management. And we want to welcome everybody to our, and National Bank of Dominica. National Bank of Dominica, thank you very much. They have been partnering with us, particularly for our debates for the past 4 years, and we look forward to their continued partnership. And we're inviting everybody to our exhibition tomorrow at the stadium, at the Botanical Gardens, outside the convent area, the back entrance to the convent high school, from 9 a.m. And thank you once again, everybody.